My name's Taylor, and we are going to learn how to upcycle some old sweaters into cool and exciting projects. Here are some old sweaters that I have. Notice that some of them are more tightly knit than others. This blue one, for instance, has a very loose knit. Working with a sweater that has a loose knit, make sure that you are using a larger seam allowance. You're going to want to sew further in away from the raw edge so that this will not unravel. Let's draft a hat pattern. The hat pattern is going to look like this with 4 equal widths of arches. And in order to get the dimensions for this, we're going to measure all the way around your head, and that's going to be the width for the bottom. And then across from your forehead to the back of your head, divide that by 2, and that's going to be the height of each of our arches. So let's take that circumference from all the way around your head and draw 2 marks. Then we're going to fold this in half, and see how I'm just folding in fourths? This is making a good line here for our 4 equal parts. And then I'm just using a fold here at both ends to get the straight edge that we need to go up. Now what I'm going to do here is I'm folding in half and making a little bit of an arch, and that center of that arch is half of that second measurement that we took. Now watch closely as I show you how to get every 4 sections equal. See how I folded like an accordion? And now I'm just going to cut along that top. Voila, we have 4 equal sections. Good job making your hat pattern. Now we're going to grab our sweater, and we're going to use the bottom part of the sweater for that hat band. And since the hat pattern is too wide, let's just cut this torso part off, flip it over, and cut down the center of the back here. Now we can find, once we fold this open, our hat pattern is shorter than the length there. Now let's pin this together, making sure that we are lining up the bottom of the hat pattern with the bottom edge of the sweater. And the reason we're doing that is because the bottom edge is already finished, so we won't even have to do anything to make it not ravel around our eyes. Now we just need to cut this out, and then once we get it cut out, we are ready to start sewing. Just fold this guy in half. Make sure that you are lining up the edges as so, and then we're going to pin all the way around until the very top, and then go to the top of the next one and pin that around. You're not going to sew where there are no red marks. Only sew on the outside edges and leave that center part of the M shape open. Once you have that sewn, you're going to want to sew it with a zigzag stitch, and then just pin these right sides together, matching up that seam first and then pinning down both sides, and then we're going to zigzag stitch across the top there too. Once that's done, you can flip it right side out, and then you've got yourself a cute little hat. If you don't like the way these little bubbles look, all you'll have to do is change the pitch of your arch here, so you'll make it smaller in order to get those bubbles to be less, and you can go ahead and just sew along like this to cut off that corner. For her gloves, we don't need to make a pattern. What we need to do is use these arms, decide how long we want our gloves to be, and then cut the same length off of the ends of both arms. We are again going to use these finished edges as the bottom, and then just kind of cut the pattern as shown here so that it kind of looks like a glove. And see how I'm seeing how long my thumb is here, and just adjust that a little bit. There we go. Now we're going to use this as a pattern for the second one, and you can just use a Sharpie there to mark how far down you went for your thumb. And then once you get to cutting the thumb length off, just use that as a pattern as well. Once you get both of those cut out, we're just going to flip it inside out and then pin them front to back. Once you get these pinned front to back, go ahead and zigzag stitch all the way around the two humps, the one large hump for all your fingers and the smaller hump for your thumb. Once those are zigzagged, while you're unpinning, check and make sure there are no holes in the seam. And then you can flip them right side out. Look at how simple and cute those gloves are. Now in this one, I did get a hole in the seam. Look, we can see here. And all I'm gonna do is flip it back inside out, put some pins in there, and then re-stitch along that spot. OMG slipper socks! Okay, so we're going to be working with the arms and sleeves here on this sweater. Go ahead and flip this right side in so it's inside out, and then we're going to cut around this sleeve. We want to cut the sleeve all the way off on the body side of this seam allowance. Once you get that done, go ahead and do it with the second sleeve, and when we've got both of those sleeves done, the next step is to trace your foot or a shoe, because we need that for the bottom of our slipper socks. Now we need to cut out two of these, so we'll pin this here and then cut around. And next we need some elastic. Go ahead and measure your foot from one side across the top to the other where your ankle hits the top of your foot, and take about 1/2 inch off of that. Cut 2 pieces of elastic that length. We're going to pin those pieces of elastic starting where this curve starts to go the other way. So it would be on the bottom of the armpit, and then go across the top and do it on the same on that side. When we sew this together, we're going to have to stretch that elastic so that we don't get wrinkles in this sock. This elastic is what's going to help make this into a foot shape and keep it on your foot. So I've put this around the deck of my sewing machine. I'm going to start out with a straight stitch and go forward and back just to anchor that elastic in place. Then I go to a zigzag stitch, pull the elastic tight in the front, and then put my hand on the back to kind of help the sewing machine pull the fabric through. If I don't help the sewing machine on the back end, then I would just pull on the front and it would never go anywhere. When we get to this other end here, we're going to straight stitch again back and forth, and then this is what it should look like on the inside when it's done. Once you get both of those done, we need to find the center of the heel of our foot pieces and mark that with a pin, and then we're going to cut off this seam allowance that we left on that side of those arms, because look at this, is a lot stretchier now. Now we're going to match up that heel center with the seam on our arm and then pin around the heel. Then we can continue to pin around until we get to the front of the foot. Once we get to your toes, we're going to go to the other side on the heel and start pinning forward. This is because the stretchiest part of this is up above the toe, and so when we see that we need to stretch that a little bit in order to get it to be the same size as the bottom of your foot, then we can stretch it. Zigzag stitch around, and as you are unpinning this, make sure there's no holes. You can flip it right side out, and voila, you have a sock slipper. Isn't it so crazy cool how many things other than scarves you can make out of an old sweater?